What would you do if someone deliberately hurt your child's service dog, and then laughed it off as a joke? Would you be able to maintain your composure, or would you lose it completely? I never thought I'd face this moral dilemma until our HOA president crossed a line that changed everything in our neighborhood. The worst part, she did it with a smile on her face, like hurting a disabled child's lifeline was entertainment. Comment below what you would have done in my shoes. I'm a single mom raising my 12-year-old son Ethan, who was diagnosed with epilepsy when he was 7. His seizures can come without warning. One minute he's playing video games or doing homework, the next he's on the ground, his small body betraying him in the cruelest way. That uncertainty ruled our lives for years, keeping us prisoners in our own home, afraid of what might happen if a seizure struck in public. Everything changed the day Max entered our lives. Max is a specially trained golden retriever service dog who can detect the subtle chemical changes in Ethan's body before a seizure occurs, giving us precious minutes to prepare. He's not just a service animal. He's the reason my son can attend school without me hovering nearby. The reason we can go grocery shopping without fear. The reason Ethan finally has a shot at a normal childhood. Max, with his gentle brown eyes and unwavering focus, is the guardian angel disguised as 70 pounds of golden fur and unconditional love. We've lived in Oakwood Estates for 5 years now. It's a picture-perfect suburban community with manicured lawns, coordinated mailboxes, and strict HOA rules that most residents follow without question. The Homeowners Association is run by Deborah Winters, a woman in her late 50s with perfectly highlighted hair and a penchant for designer outfits that seem excessive for neighborhood meetings. She wears her HOA president title like a crown and treats Oakwood Estates as her personal fief. She's been president for 8 consecutive years, running unopposed because no one wants to deal with her wrath if they dare to challenge her authority. From the day we moved in, Deborah made it clear she wasn't thrilled about Max's presence. The first time she spotted him in our front yard, her lips pursed so tightly they nearly disappeared. "Dogs over 50 pounds need special approval," she said, clipboard already in hand. When I explained about Ethan's condition and Max's role as a service animal protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act, she smiled that thin smile that never reached her eyes. "We'll see about that," she said before walking away briskly. And see about it she did. Despite my documentation from Ethan's neurologist and Max's certification papers, Deborah found endless ways to complain. "The dog sheds on common areas," she'd write in official warnings. "His paws might damage the pool deck," she'd announce at meetings. "Some residents might be allergic," she'd remind me whenever I brought Max to community events. Each complaint was delivered with that same tight smile, the veneer of politeness barely concealing her disdain. My brother Jake, a former K-9 officer who now works as a private security consultant, always told me to document everything. "People like her don't stop until they face consequences," he'd say, his eyes serious. "One day she'll go too far, and you'll need proof." Jake had seen the worst of humanity during his time on the force, and that experience had given him a sixth sense about people like Deborah. I didn't realize how prophetic his words would be. Last month, the HOA called a meeting to discuss the upcoming summer renovations for the community center. The email notification mentioned potential increases in quarterly dues, so I knew attendance would be high. These meetings typically run long, and I couldn't find a sitter familiar with Ethan's condition on short notice. I had no choice but to bring him along with Max. Jake offered to come with us for moral support, knowing how Deborah could be when she had an audience. The community center was packed when we arrived, every folding chair filled with neighbors in various states of concern about their wallets. I noticed several eye rolls from Deborah's circle of friends. I call them her court ladies. As we walked in with Max, who was wearing his official service vest and behaving perfectly as always, we found seats near the back, close to the exit in case Ethan needed a quick break. Jake sat beside us, giving reassuring nods to Ethan, who was nervously fidgeting with Max's leash, uncomfortable with being the center of attention as newcomers noticed the dog. "It's okay, buddy," I whispered. "Max is allowed to be here. No one can make him leave." Ethan nodded, but his eyes darted anxiously toward the front of the room, where Deborah was organizing her papers at the podium, occasionally glancing our way with obvious disapproval. The meeting started normally enough. Deborah stood at the podium in a beige pantsuit that probably cost more than my monthly rent, reading through proposals for new landscaping and pool furniture with the self-importance of someone addressing the United Nations Security Council. Her voice had that practiced cadence of someone who believes volume and enunciation equate to authority. As you can see in the distributed materials, she emphasized, waving manicured fingers at the handouts, we have 3 options for the pool furniture, ranging from $15,000 to $32,000. The board recommends the premium option, which would require a special assessment of $200 per household in addition to the regular dues increase. A collective groan rippled through the audience. This was when the first heated debate broke out, with several residents questioning the necessity of designer poolside loungers. The conversation quickly became heated, with multiple people speaking at once. While everyone was distracted by the discussion, I noticed Deborah step down from the podium and make her way through the room, supposedly to hand some documents to the treasurer, who was seated across the aisle from us. Her path deliberately took her right past our row, though there was plenty of space to walk through the center aisle. What happened next still makes my blood boil when I think about it. As Deborah passed by, she looked down at Max, who was lying quietly at Ethan's feet as he'd been trained to do, and deliberately swung her foot, connecting with Max's side with enough force that the sound was audible to those nearby. Max yelped in pain and confusion, shrinking against Ethan's legs. Ethan gasped, his face paling as he reached down to comfort his dog, eyes wide with disbelief that an adult would do such a thing. Deborah didn't even break stride. She looked back with a smirk and said, loudly enough for several people to hear, "Oh, please. It was just a little joke. Don't be so sensitive. That much shouldn't be in here anyway." The room didn't fall silent like in the movies. Most people were still engaged in the heated discussion about pool furniture and didn't notice what had happened. But those nearby did, including Mrs. Peterson, an elderly lady who has always been kind to Ethan and often brings him homemade cookies, and the Ramirez family, whose daughter has Down syndrome and who understand all too well the challenges of raising a child with special needs. I was frozen in shock, my mind struggling to process what had just happened. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a petty complaint. This was a deliberate act of cruelty aimed at my son's service animal, the dog that kept him safe and gave him independence. My hands trembled as anger and disbelief warred within me. Before I could even form words, Jake was on his feet. Let us know where you're watching from today. And if you're new here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to join our growing community. Jake's face was calm, but I recognized the controlled anger in his eyes. Years of police training had taught him to handle confrontation without escalation. He didn't yell or cause a scene. Instead, he pulled out his phone and said clearly, "Mrs. Winters, are you aware that intentionally interfering with a service animal is a federal offense under the Americans with Disabilities Act?" Deborah stopped in her tracks and turned slowly, her expression flickering between annoyance and uncertainty. "I barely touched the animal. This is ridiculous." "It's also animal abuse," Jake continued, his voice level but carrying across the now quieting room as nearby conversations began to die down. "As a former K9 handler, I can tell you that what you just did has legal consequences, and I have it on video." I turned to see that Jake had indeed been recording the meeting on his phone, something he'd started doing at HOA meetings after Deborah had previously misrepresented what residents had said when taking minutes. Deborah's face flushed, 2 spots of angry color appearing high on her cheekbones. "You can't record me without my permission. That's an invasion of privacy." "Actually," interjected Mr. Ramirez, who I later learned was an attorney specializing in property law, "this is a public meeting in a common area with no expectation of privacy. The recording is perfectly legal in this state and would be admissible in court if necessary." The word court hung in the air like a thunderclap. By now the entire room had gone quiet, all eyes on our confrontation. Even the most heated debate about pool furniture had been forgotten, as neighbors sensed a more dramatic showdown unfolding. Ethan was trembling beside me, his hand buried in Max's fur, seeking the comfort that his service dog had always provided. Max had recovered from the shock but remained alert, sensing Ethan's distress.